She mistook a millionaire single dad for her $5. Blind date, but that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of conversation filled the elegant Italian restaurant in downtown New York. Golden light spilled from crystal chandeliers, dancing across the glossy tables where couples leaned close over glasses of wine. It was the kind of place where every meal looked like a painting, expensive, beautiful, and far too fancy for someone like her. Lila Brooks stood by the entrance, her fingers gripping her thrift store purse a little too tight. Her reflection in the glass door showed a second-hand dress she had stitched herself, slightly wrinkled from the subway ride, and shoes whose soles had seen better days. Still, she whispered to herself, you promised Jenny you would try, just once. Tonight was supposed to be simple, a $5 blind date from an app for real people, not perfect ones. She scanned the room nervously, murmuring under her breath, Table 5, Table 5. Then her eyes landed on a man sitting alone near the back. A dark navy suit, clean-cut hair, a quiet confidence that seemed out of place for a $5 date. Her heart raced. Maybe the app had finally sent her someone decent. She took a deep breath, forced a smile, and walked over. Hi, you must be Aaron? I am Lila. It is so nice to meet you. The man looked up, startled. His name was Daniel Cole, but he did not correct her. A message had just flashed on his phone. Meeting canceled. For a moment, he considered telling her she had the wrong person, but something in her nervous smile, the way her voice trembled just a little, made him pause. He closed his phone, smiled faintly, and said, Right. Blind dates or something else, huh? Lila laughed awkwardly, relief washing over her. Tell me about it. My friend signed me up because she thinks I talk too much. She said I needed someone calm to balance me out. I guess that is you. Daniel chuckled. Maybe. The waiter appeared with water. Lila reached for her glass, her hands still slightly shaking. So, Aaron, what do you do for work? He hesitated, then said, I work in tech. Her eyes brightened. Wow, that sounds cool. I cannot even set up my Wi-Fi without breaking something. He smiled again, intrigued by how genuine she sounded. It has its challenges. Oh. As they talked, Daniel found himself drawn in despite knowing this was all a mistake. She told him about working double shifts as a waitress, about her mother's medical bills, and her dream of one day opening a small art studio. Every word was simple, unfiltered, and real. You are not what I expected, Lila said suddenly. What do you mean? Daniel asked. I thought you would be quiet or boring, but you are easy to talk to. He laughed softly. You are easy to talk to, too. Oh? For a brief moment, the noise of the restaurant faded. It felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of them, two strangers meeting by chance at the wrong table, not knowing this mistake would change everything. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and her smile froze. A message from the real Aaron. Hey Lila, I am at table 5. Where are you? Her cheeks turned crimson. Slowly she looked up. You are not Aaron, are you? Daniel's smile faded, guilt flickering in his eyes. No, he said quietly. Oh my God. She stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. I am so sorry, I thought. Wait, Daniel said, but she was already backing away, grabbing her coat. It was a mistake, she whispered, her voice breaking, and rushed out into the cool New York night. Daniel sat there, watching her disappear through the glass doors, her reflection swallowed by the rain. For reasons he could not explain, he could not stop thinking about the girl who sat at the wrong table, and somehow made everything feel right. The rain had stopped by morning, but the city still carried that gray hush that lingers after a storm. Daniel Cole sat in his penthouse office, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows, and the quiet hum of downtown traffic below. He should have been reading quarterly reports or replying to investor emails, yet his mind was far from business. It kept circling back to the girl from the wrong table. Her name had been Lila Brooks. He had searched it without meaning to, typing the name into his phone, then closing the screen before pressing enter. Something about her had unsettled him, in a good way. She had looked at him like a person, not like a bank account or a last name. That had not happened in years. Across the city, Lila sat on her worn couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of detergent and rain. Her roommate Jenny sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping instant coffee and staring at her with a teasing smile. "So, how was the $5 date?" Jenny asked. Lila groaned, burying her face in a pillow. "Disastrous. I sat at the wrong table. The guy was nice, polite, actually funny. But then I realized he was not my date, and I ran out like a total idiot." Jenny laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. "Wait, you just left? Maybe he thought it was cute." Cute?" I interrupted a stranger's dinner. "He is probably telling his friends about the crazy girl who attacked him with small talk." But later, when the laughter faded and Jenny went to work, Lila found herself opening her sketchbook again. Between doodles of raindrops and half-drawn coffee cups, she added a quick sketch of his face, the calm eyes, the faint smile that had almost looked lonely. She stared at it for a long moment, then closed the book and shook her head. "Get over it, Lila. It was one dinner, one mistake." Days passed. She worked her usual shifts at the diner, balancing trays and plastering on smiles even when her feet ached. Yet, every now and then, she caught herself glancing toward the door, half hoping he might walk in. Then one afternoon, as she was wiping down the counter, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "Do you happen to have a free table?" She turned, stunned. Daniel stood there, dressed more casually this time, no suit, no tie, just a gray sweater and that same calm expression. "You?" she whispered. He smiled slightly. "You ran off before I could thank you for one of the most interesting dinners I have had in years." Her cheeks flushed. "Interesting?" I embarrassed myself. "Maybe," he said, but it was honest. He ordered a coffee and sat at the corner booth while she worked. For the rest of her shift, her hands would not stay steady. Every time she glanced up, he was there, reading something on his phone but occasionally watching her with a faint, unreadable smile. When her shift ended, he stood and waited by the door. "Walk with me?" he asked. She hesitated only a second before nodding. They stepped into the cool evening air, the street glowing under orange lamps. "I never got to ask," she said softly. "Why did you play along that night?" He thought for a moment before answering. "Because for the first time in a long time, someone talked to me without wanting anything." They walked past small shops and steaming food carts, the city breathing around them. Lila told him about her dream of saving enough to open a small art studio for neighborhood kids. He listened, genuinely listened, asking questions instead of offering advice. When they reached the subway entrance, he paused. "You know, I could help with that dream," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No thank you. I do not need saving. I just need a little luck." He smiled, admiring her stubbornness. "Maybe luck looks like a stranger at the wrong table." Lila laughed, her breath forming clouds in the cool air. "If that is true, then maybe I should get lost more often." They stood there for a heartbeat too long, both aware that this was the start of something neither had planned. As the train roared below, she looked at him and said, "Next time, you pick the table." And for the first time in years, Daniel felt the simple warmth of hope. The next morning began with a rush of sunlight across the skyline and the distant sound of car horns. Daniel Cole sat in his office, staring at his schedule as his assistant Claire listed appointments in her precise, no-nonsense tone. 10 o'clock meeting with the Carter Foundation, lunch with Rothman, and the press interview at 4, she said. "Would you like me to confirm dinner with Mr. Jensen?" Daniel blinked, realizing he had not heard half of what she said. "Cancel the lunch," he murmured. Claire looked up from her tablet. "Cancel it. You never cancel with Rothman." "I know," Daniel said, leaning back in his chair, eyes drifting to the city below. "Just do it." Claire hesitated, then folded her arms. "All right, who is she?" He raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? The only time you have ever canceled anything important was when your son got sick or when someone actually got under your skin. So, who is she?" Daniel exhaled, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Just someone I met by accident. She thought I was someone else." Claire smirked. "A case of mistaken identity? That is a first. Is she rich or famous?" "No," he said softly. "That is the best part." Meanwhile, across town, Lila rushed between tables at the diner. The breakfast crowd was heavier than usual, and the manager was shouting for more coffee refills. Yet, despite the chaos, she found herself humming under her breath. Jenny noticed and grinned. "You are smiling. That is new." What happened? You win the lottery or something? Something like that, Lila said with a shrug. He came back yesterday, the wrong table guy. Jenny gasped dramatically. No way. The mystery man? Lila nodded, trying to keep her voice casual. He said he just wanted coffee, but we ended up walking and talking for an hour. He listens, you know, like really listens. Jenny leaned closer. And? Are you going to see him again? Lila bit her lip, glancing out the window. He did not say, but I kind of hope so. Later that week, she did see him again. Daniel showed up outside the diner, just as her shift ended, holding 2 paper cups. You survived another day, he said, handing her one. She smiled. Barely. What is this? Hot chocolate. I figured coffee might be too predictable. They walked through Central Park, the trees bare, the air crisp with the coming of winter. Children laughed by the pond, tossing crumbs to ducks, while street musicians filled the air with soft guitar notes. Lila opened her sketchbook and began to draw the pond, quick pencil strokes forming ripples and silhouettes. Daniel watched quietly. You really see the world differently, he said. She smiled without looking up. Maybe. Drawing helps me remember that beauty still exists, even on the hard days. He nodded. My son loves to draw, too. Her head lifted. You have a son? His name is Noah. He is 6. He thinks I am the least cool dad in New York. She laughed. That is a tough title to lose. Maybe I can help fix your reputation. Daniel looked at her, warmth in his eyes. Maybe you already are. Oh? From that day, he started visiting the diner more often, sometimes with Noah. The boy would sit at the counter with a chocolate milkshake, showing Lila his crayon sketches, while Daniel watched them with quiet amusement. One afternoon, Noah handed Lila a small folded paper. Inside was a childish drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. Above them, in wobbly letters, he had written, Table 5. Lila smiled, touched beyond words. This is for me? Noah nodded. Dad said you met at a table, so I drew one. Daniel felt his chest tighten at the simple kindness of it. For years, his life had been a series of boardrooms and empty dinners. But here, in this small diner, something real was returning a sense of home, of connection. When Lila looked up at him, their eyes met, and for a long moment, neither spoke. The city outside blurred into light and motion, but at that table, time felt still. Maybe it really had started with a mistake, Daniel thought. But maybe that was exactly how fate worked. Sometimes it did not tap you on the shoulder. Sometimes it just sat you at the wrong table. Winter arrived quietly that year, wrapping the city in thin sheets of frost and a kind of hush that made every sound feel softer. Lila's days grew longer at the diner, but her nights began to feel warmer. Daniel and Noah visited often, sometimes just for a cup of cocoa, sometimes to walk her home. The 3 of them had fallen into a rhythm that felt strangely natural, as if it had always been meant to happen that way. One evening, as snowflakes drifted beneath the streetlights, Lila met Daniel and Noah in the park. Noah was bundled in a bright red scarf, proudly holding a snowman kit he had begged his father to buy. Lila laughed as the little boy tried to stack snowballs that kept rolling apart. Come on, Miss Lila, you are doing it wrong, he said through a wide grin. I am doing my best, sir, she replied, pretending to salute. Daniel stood a few feet away, watching them. For the first time in years, the sound of laughter around him did not feel distant. It felt like home. When Lila turned and smiled at him, he realized that something inside him was quietly shifting. He was no longer looking for a distraction. He was finding peace. After Noah fell asleep in the backseat of the car, Daniel offered to drive Lila home. The streets were nearly empty, and the only sound came from the hum of the heater and the faint rhythm of the tires on snow. Lila looked out the window, her voice soft. He is a great kid. You must be proud. I am, Daniel said. He keeps me honest. After his mother passed, I forgot how to laugh. He reminded me. Lila turned toward him, her eyes gentle. And now you both remind each other. They stopped in front of her apartment building. The streetlight caught the snow in golden streaks. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small notebook. I saw you drawing last week, he said. I thought you might want this. Blank pages, maybe for something new. She took it carefully, her fingers brushing his. Thank you. I will fill it with better days. He smiled. I think you already are. From that night on, they began to see each other beyond the diner. He invited her and Noah to visit the art museum, to walk through exhibits where colors told stories words could not. Lila noticed how Daniel's face softened when Noah tugged his sleeve, or when she explained how light could change a painting's emotion. He was not the untouchable man she had first mistaken him for. He was quiet, kind, and sometimes a little lost. One evening, as they stood before a painting of a city skyline at sunset, Daniel said quietly, "You know, you helped me see beauty again." Lila turned to him. "That is funny. I was going to say the same thing." He smiled, but before he could speak, his phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message. Reminder, Charity Gala, Cole Foundation, Friday 7 p.m. Lila leaned over. Cole Foundation? That sounds familiar. Daniel quickly locked the screen, his tone even. "It is just work. You would not find it interesting." She nodded, not pressing further, though a flicker of curiosity crossed her face. Outside, the snow began to fall harder, swirling around them in quiet white circles. Lila held her new notebook close to her chest and looked at Daniel one more time before stepping into the cab. "Good night, Mr. Wrong Table," she said playfully. He laughed softly. "Good night, Miss $5 date." But as the taxi drove away, he stood on the sidewalk a little longer, the snow melting against his coat, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel Cole, the man everyone knew as the distant millionaire, felt truly afraid. Not of loss, not of failure, but of what might happen when the truth finally came out. Friday evening arrived with a chill that seemed to cut through the heart of the city. Lila wrapped herself in her worn gray coat as she hurried across the plaza toward the downtown convention hall. The diner had been asked to cater for a private event, and the manager had begged her to help serve. She had no idea whose event it was, only that it was some kind of charity gala. Inside, the hall shimmered with gold and crystal. A live orchestra played softly while guests in elegant gowns and tuxedos drifted beneath chandeliers. Lila balanced a tray of champagne flutes, doing her best to blend into the background. The night was far from her world, yet something about it felt strangely familiar. As she passed one of the tall marble pillars, she froze. Across the room, standing under a wash of warm light, was Daniel. He wore a black suit, his posture calm, his expression confident. Cameras flashed around him as reporters spoke his name, Daniel Cole, CEO of Cole Technologies and founder of the Cole Foundation. Lila's breath caught. The words echoed inside her head like thunder. CEO, founder, millionaire. Her hands trembled, and one of the glasses nearly tipped over. She set the tray down quickly and stepped behind a column, her heart pounding. Images raced through her mind, his quiet apartment stories, his simple job in tech, his silence whenever she mentioned dreams or money. He had lied. Every smile, every walk, every cup of hot chocolate, they had all been shared with a man she never truly knew. She stayed hidden until the crowd began to applaud. The host's voice echoed through the speakers, announcing, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Daniel Cole." Daniel walked to the stage, his voice steady as he spoke about hope, rebuilding, and giving back to the city. Lila listened, numb, as the audience cheered. This was not the man who sat at her diner booth sketching ducks with Noah. This was someone powerful, someone untouchable. When the speech ended, she turned to leave, but her eyes blurred with tears. She pushed open the back door and stepped into the cold night air, the sound of applause still chasing her. Behind her, Daniel saw the flash of movement and recognized her instantly. Without hesitation, he excused himself from the crowd and followed. He found her standing by the service exit, her coat pulled tightly around her shoulders, her face streaked with tears. "Lila," he said softly. She turned, her voice trembling. "So this is the real you, the millionaire, the foundation, the lies." Daniel took a slow breath. "I never meant to deceive you. I just wanted you to know me without all the noise." She shook her head. "You could have told me the truth." "I was afraid," he admitted. "Every person I have met in years wanted something from me. You did not. I wanted to keep that." Lila's eyes filled again, her voice breaking. "You wanted honesty, and yet you built everything between us on a lie." Daniel stepped closer, but she stepped back. "Please, just listen." "No," she said, her tone final. "You do not get to ask that anymore." For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the hum of the city. Then she whispered, "Goodbye, Daniel," and walked away into the night. He stood there long after she disappeared, the cold biting through his suit. Inside, the orchestra played again, a bright song for a glittering world he suddenly wanted no part of. And for the first time in years, Daniel Cole felt the weight of his wealth like a chain he could not remove. The next few weeks passed in a blur of silence. Snow covered the city in soft white layers, but to Lila, everything felt cold and empty. She threw herself into work, taking extra shifts, sketching late at night to keep her hands busy and her thoughts quiet. Yet no matter how hard she tried, Daniel's face lingered in her mind the way he had looked at her, the sound of his voice when he said her name. Jenny noticed the change. One night, as they closed the diner together, she leaned against the counter and said, "You have not smiled in days. Do not tell me it is just the winter blues." Lila sighed. "It is complicated." "Oh." Jenny crossed her arms. "Then uncomplicate it. Talk to him." "I cannot," Lila said softly. "He lied. Everything he told me was a half-truth." "How do you forgive that?" Jenny shook her head. "Maybe by remembering that he is human. You said he was kind to his son, that he made you feel seen. Those things are not fake." Lila looked down at her sketchbook, its pages filled with unfinished drawings. "Maybe," she whispered, "but I do not know if I can ever trust him again." Across town, Daniel sat alone in his study. The grand windows framed the skyline, but even the city lights could not fill the emptiness inside him. Noah was asleep upstairs, his small crayon drawing of Table 5 taped proudly on the refrigerator. Every time Daniel saw it, it reminded him of what he had lost. He replayed that night at the gala, over and over, in his mind her face, when she realized who he was, the pain in her voice. He had built empires, negotiated billion-dollar deals, yet he could not find the words to fix one broken heart. Claire, his assistant, entered quietly with a folder. "The press wants a statement about your new art sponsorship," she said. Daniel looked up slowly. "Art sponsorship?" She nodded. "The foundation plans to open a community art exhibit for underprivileged artists. It was your idea months ago, remember?" He hesitated, then said, "Let us do it. Make it personal. Name it after someone who deserves to be seen." Claire studied him. "You have someone in mind?" "Yes," he said quietly, "but she will never know." In the weeks that followed, Daniel poured his energy into the project. The Cole Foundation began planning an exhibition called The Art of Everyday Light. It was meant to highlight ordinary people finding beauty in small things. Every detail, from the color of the banners to the invitations, reminded him of Lila, her laugh, her sketches, her way of finding hope in broken places. Meanwhile, Lila continued to draw, unaware of what was coming. Her sketches had grown more emotional cityscapes fading into the fog, a coffee cup left half full, a table for two under dim light. One night, as she flipped through her sketchbook, she found the page where she had drawn Daniel's face the morning after their first meeting. For a long time, she simply looked at it, then whispered, "Why could you not just be honest?" Outside, snow kept falling, soft and endless. Somewhere across the city, a man she could not forgive was trying to make amends in the only way he knew how, through actions, not words. And though neither of them knew it yet, their paths were quietly curving back toward each other. Sometimes love does not end with goodbye. Sometimes it waits, patient and unseen, beneath the weight of winter, until the moment the heart is ready to thaw again. Spring came quietly, melting away the last traces of snow from the sidewalks. The city began to bloom again, but for Lila, the change of season did little to ease the heaviness inside her. She worked. She sketched. She smiled when people expected her to. But it all felt like pretending. The only place she still felt at peace was the park, where she could sit on the same bench she used to share with Daniel and Noah. There, she would open her sketchbook and let her pencil wander, sketching memories she tried not to miss. One Sunday afternoon, while she was drawing the reflection of the trees on the pond, a small voice interrupted her. "Miss Lila?" She looked up in surprise. Standing a few feet away was Noah, holding a toy airplane in his mittened hand. His face lit up when she turned toward him. "Dad said I might see you here," he said. Lila's heart twisted. She looked past him and saw Daniel standing by the path, watching quietly. He looked the same, yet somehow different, more tired, more human. "Noah, maybe you should go play for a minute," Daniel said gently. The boy nodded and ran toward the swings. Lila closed her sketchbook and stood. "What are you doing here?" I wanted to see you, Daniel said. Just once more. She crossed her arms, her tone steady but cold. You already saw me, at the gala. That should have been enough. I know, he said softly. But I need to tell you something. She hesitated. Then say it. I was wrong, Daniel said. I thought I could protect what we had by hiding who I was. I thought you would look at me differently if you knew. But I ended up proving exactly what I feared, that I did not deserve your trust. Lila's expression did not change. You had your reasons. But that does not make it right. He nodded. I understand. And I am not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to say thank you. You reminded me of what kindness looks like when it has nothing to do with money. You made me a better father. Her voice softened. Noah always had that in him. You just learned to see it again. Daniel smiled faintly. Maybe. But you were the reason I remembered how. For a moment, the wind carried the sound of laughter from the swings. Noah was waving at them, calling her name. Lila blinked back tears she had not expected. Daniel looked down, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. This is not for you, he said. It is an invitation. The Cole Foundation is opening a new art exhibit next week. It is for artists who capture beauty in everyday life. I thought you might want to see it. Lila hesitated, then took the envelope. Why would you want me there? Because it is yours, Daniel said simply. Every piece, every wall, every name on the program was inspired by you. It is called The Art of Lila Brooks. She froze, her breath catching. What did you say? He smiled, his eyes gentle. It is not about me anymore. It never was. Before she could respond, Noah came running back, holding a handful of daisies. These are for you, Miss Lila. She took them, her fingers trembling. By the time she looked up again, Daniel was already walking away, leaving footprints on the path. Lila stood there, the envelope clutched in her hand, her heart racing in confusion. She wanted to be angry, to stay distant, but something about his quiet sincerity broke through her walls. As she watched him disappear into the crowd, a thought whispered in her mind. Perhaps not every goodbye was meant to last forever. Sometimes, fate waits for you to catch up. The night of the exhibition arrived with a soft drizzle that painted the streets in streaks of gold and silver. Lila stood outside the glass doors of the downtown art hall, clutching the invitation Daniel had given her. She had read and reread the words printed in delicate script, The Art of Lila Brooks. A celebration of beauty in ordinary life. Every time she looked at it, her heart thudded with disbelief. Inside, the gallery glowed under soft white light. Guests moved slowly from piece to piece, murmuring admiration. The air carried the faint scent of fresh paint and polished wood. Lila hesitated before stepping through the doors, her shoes echoing faintly against the marble floor. Then she saw it. Across the room hung a series of framed sketches, her sketches, the ones she had left in old notebooks and coffee-stained pages. The rainy street corner, the diner window, the park bench, even the drawing of a man in a dark coat looking out at the skyline. Every piece bore her name neatly printed below. Artwork by Lila Brooks. Her breath caught. How did he even find these? She whispered. Most were from your old social posts, a familiar voice said behind her. Some were from the diner's donation wall. I just filled in the missing pages. She turned. Daniel stood there in a charcoal suit. No bodyguards, no reporters, no crowd. Just him. Lila's eyes glistened. Why would you do all this? Because I needed you to see what you showed me, he said quietly. You once told me you draw so you do not forget the good things. I wanted to give that back to you to remind you that you never needed anyone's permission to shine. She shook her head, overwhelmed. You could have just said you were sorry. Daniel smiled faintly. I did not think words were enough anymore. They stood there in silence as people drifted past, admiring her work. A few even congratulated her, unaware that she was the artist herself. Lila looked around the room, tears slowly gathering at the corners of her eyes. There is one more piece, Daniel said softly. Come with me. He led her to a smaller gallery space at the back. In the center of the wall hung a single large canvas, a recreation of the sketch she had once drawn of Table 5. Only this time, it was painted in color. The candlelight glowed warm, the plates shimmered faintly, and two figures sat across from each other, mid-laughter. The plaque beneath read, The best mistake we ever made. Lila pressed a hand to her mouth, unable to speak. I kept the sketch you left that night, Daniel said. I looked at it every day, It reminded me that the best things in life do not come from plans or perfection. They come from the moments we almost run away from. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and her voice trembled. "You really did all of this? For me?" "For us," he said simply. "For the version of us that began with a wrong table but found something right." Noah appeared from behind a column, holding a small bouquet of daisies. "Dad said you should have these again," he said shyly. Lila knelt, smiling through her tears as she took the flowers. "Thank you, Noah." Daniel's voice softened. "I cannot undo what I broke, but I can spend the rest of my life proving what was real." Lila looked up at him, her heart unsteady. "Then prove it," she whispered. And for the first time since that rainy night, Daniel took her hand, not as a secret, not as a lie, but as a promise quietly beginning to take root in the light of her own art. A few months later, the city had traded its gray skies for soft spring sunlight. The art gallery that once hosted the art of Lila Brooks now displayed new local talent. But people still spoke about the show that had moved everyone to tears. For Lila, that night had changed everything. It had turned a story of hurt into one of healing. Her life slowly found balance again. She opened a small art studio downtown, where children came every weekend to paint and laugh. Sometimes, when she looked around the room filled with color and sound, she could not believe this was the same girl who once spilled coffee at a diner and sat at the wrong table. One afternoon, as she finished tidying the brushes, the bell above the door chimed. Daniel stepped inside, holding a small box wrapped in gold paper. He wore no suit this time, only a light shirt and that same quiet smile she had once mistaken for shyness. "You are early," she teased. "I did not want to miss class," he replied, glancing at the rows of children painting near the window. Noah was among them, covered in smudges of green and blue, laughing happily. Daniel handed her the box. "A small anniversary gift. It has been 1 year since table 5. "Oh." Lila untied the ribbon carefully. Inside was a small silver pendant shaped like an open sketchbook, engraved with the words, "The best mistake." She looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "You remembered." "I could never forget," he said. The children clapped suddenly as Noah ran forward, holding a paint-smeared card that read, "Will you marry my dad?" The entire class burst into giggles. Lila covered her mouth, tears instantly filling her eyes. Daniel knelt, pulling a small ring from his pocket. "Lila Brooks," he said softly, "you once told me art is about finding light in broken places. You became my light. Will you let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget that?" For a moment, everything went silent, the brushes, the chatter, even the hum of the street outside. Then Lila nodded, unable to speak. "Yes," she whispered, smiling through tears. "Yes, I will." The room erupted in cheers. Noah hugged them both, streaking Daniel's shirt with paint. Lila laughed, her heart full. Later, as they locked up the studio and stepped out into the evening light, Daniel reached for her hand. The city glowed gold around them. He said quietly, "Who would have thought? 1 wrong table." She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "The best mistake we ever made." And with that, they walked into the sunset, no disguises, no secrets, just 2 hearts finally where they were meant to be.